See, Bree has been in here again, taking a part of the board. Wednesday, August 5th. Oh, that's this Wednesday, isn't it?
Hey, Bill,
Yes.
can you start more in the middle so that I can?
Okay. I'm
Would that be
sorry.
all right?
That's
Would you mind?
fine. No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
You'll have enough board space.
I always hate this thing here, and
Yeah.
at some of the campuses, there's a button where the screen goes up and down without this hanging pendulum. We always had, first of all, for each major area or each major account on the balance sheet primarily, we would have a lead schedule. For example, for cash, this would be cash and bank. That was the A schedule. They use A-1 or something in our text, I noticed. And I pulled out one of the markers that's almost dry, so let me change. So what we would have here is, here we have, let's say, a cash and bank from the Northern Trust. We might have it from Fifth Third. And let's just put down Chase. So we have the balances in these accounts. And the total would be traced to the trial balance. So that would be like T/B. So this would be our lead schedule, but then we got to have supporting schedules for all of these areas as well. So for example, let's take a look at Fifth Third. We might have one schedule which we might call it let's make it A-1. And so over here I may put down A-1. And this would be cash in Fifth Third. Now what I might have here is a breakout of what's in the savings accounts there. I might have something that's for checking, or maybe something in CDs at this particular account, at Fifth Third. And the total would then basically go back to the A schedule, because this should equal the balance that's here. So notice this is almost like cross-referencing here, where we've got the total amount, here's the breakout of that amount. But then we might have something else. For example, let's say we're going to have another for Fifth Third here. And let's call this A-1 over 1. And what we might have for that is the bank reconciliation. And the work that we've done, let's say, for the bank reconciliation for that particular account. So A-1 over 1. And then let's say I have a standard bank confirmation form, so I might include that also. This would all be for Fifth Third now. So the standard bank confirmation, now I would staple it onto a work paper. And let's say that's for Fifth Third again. And I might even call that A-1 over 1-1. So it's a little different coding system from the one that's in our text. Accounts receivable was the B series. We basically use letters of the alphabet. Now, when you have an audit program and you complete the steps that are involved in an audit, then as you do that, you use tick marks. And they do show some illustrations of that in our text. For example, on page 193. Is the ebook working today? Okay, it's been on and off. You would have an audit program, and as you, 193. figure, excuse me, I said figure, 7-4. This inherently is for notes receivable customers. Notice in the upper right-hand corner, they have C-1. Now, looking at this schedule, these are the notes received from customers that were at a particular point in time. Here it's November 30th. This might be an area of the audit that they're doing on a preliminary basis. Now, I have a feeling, although it doesn't say that here, that originally I would have gone to someone like Barry as the controller and I would have said, I need you to prepare for me a PBC schedule. Remember, PBC is prepared by client. And have his people do this note receivable, just listing the notes, the dates, the issue date, maturity, and so forth. Then I'm going to audit that. That saves me doing that time, and it's good for him because it'll mean less fees of the audit. So I'm going to talk about planning the audit today, bill schedule. I know there's different stuff in the text and for exam purposes. But again here, PBC schedules that you have the client prepare. Then you have an audit program that has different steps. And we gave you some examples of that last week when I gave you a couple of sample projects that were turned in by other students. And you can kind of take a look at that. Probably don't have it with you now, but...
So first we do the PBC schedule.
First of all, you request the client to do a PBC schedule. Other schedules you'll do yourself, without relying. Like, for example, the lead schedule for cash, I would do myself. I would go into the client's books and I would get the ending balances of cash for all those accounts. But an auto work program, like you'll be doing for your project, does appear like this, where there's preparer's initials, and it says additional explanation is usually where you put down the work paper in which that step has been satisfied. So look at all this coding. So for example, if we're talking about, we might have A-1 down if it's something relating to that particular lead schedule. We also, by the way, would have an AJE schedule. And that's for adjusting journal entries. So, and there you're adjusting journal entry you came up with the course of the audit. At the end of the audit, I would go to someone like Barry and I'd say, all right, these are our adjusting entries that we're proposing. And he and I would negotiate basically which ones would be booked and which ones we might pass on. Some might be passed on as immaterial. I was on some audits where they said, Bill, you have to come up with 40 adjusting entries.
You have to?
Yeah, this was unofficial. And there may not be that many. So boy, it was really reaching to try and come up with that, but that's what the manager wanted. Obviously then if Barry and I got together, some of these would be so rinky-dink, we'd say, oh God, look at this, reclassifying a $100 piece of equipment, it should be, rather than expensing it, obviously we're going to pass on that. So I just write pass and material. Others I would book and I would put documentation where we journalized it. Now, as you sign off on each audit procedure, that should appear on the work paper, and then look at their tick marks. Now, some of them here, they use symbols. I used to like to use sometimes Greek letters and things. Certain things are typical, like the F, for example, or a capital T for footed, or total. Notice here they had X, agreed face amount, interest rate, issue, and maturity dates to the note receivable document. That was here on that X tick mark. Now, obviously what would have happened here is that I would have gotten this schedule from the client, and then basically in the audit work program, it would have said, trace all customer notes receivable to the underlying document and check for face amount, interest rate, issue, and maturity date to see if they are in agreement. So that's exactly what we would do, and once we did that, we'd use the tick mark next to one of the figures, and we would document that in the audit work program, putting down C-1. Notice also here, positive confirmation received, no material exceptions issued. They confirmed all these notes, sure, because there's not that many notes. So they sent out a confirmation notice. For accounts receivable, because there's a lot more, we do sampling. Here, there's only a few notes, we'll confirm them all. And that would have been a step in the audit program. Confirm all notes receivable outstanding with the makers of the note. And then once we did that, we put in the audit program, we'd sign off on it. You sign off with your initials, the date, and the work paper, the C-1. Recalculated accrued interest, no exceptions noted. This is something you'll do yourself mechanically. You'll basically just take the interest rate times the note principal times the requisite time period. Footed or totaled, notice traced and agreed to the trial balance. Now, this work paper also has a conclusion. Not all work papers will do that. It says here that the note balance appears fairly stated. Collectability of the notes was discussed with the controller. Per our conversation, they all appear collectible. No loss provision is necessary. Other cases, you might have a conclusion which, provides something contrary, like an accounts receivable. Is the allowance for doubtful accounts at a reasonable level, considering the nature of the customers of your client? So I just kind of wanted to, again, I wish we had a chance to do some work papers. We have now more Excel spreadsheets, so we don't have as much arduous nature, but a lot of work papers still got to be basically manually prepared.
You don't have any Excel, like templates that do this?
There are some that are out there with different software packages, and your major public accounting firms have their own.
Yeah, I've worked with some of them where all they're doing is, you've got this young guy coming in to do an audit, and he's got a spreadsheet, and all he's doing is plugging in numbers, and it
Right.
computes everything
Yeah.
and says, okay, these are our concerns, and everything else is good.
I see, and it really saves all that work that had to be
Yeah.
done
So,
manually.
do you do the
Okay.
financials at your company right now, or no?
No.
No? Okay, I'm just wondering, because like, when I do the financials, we do have the Excel, like how you're saying how he has it, so I
Right.
just copy it and do it every month the same way. But I was just wondering, for me to play with it, that's why I was asking, like, do you have any, because I don't know.
Oh, no, I
learned,
don't
like-
offhand.
Yeah, I
Right,
learned
right.
from
I'm sure there's some available for sale. I know the major firms have their own. And obviously, of course, they have the capacity to be able to produce those, and they can use them then on all audits, making just modifications that might be necessary for the peculiarities of a client. At Anderson, I imagine at a firm like Anderson, if it weren't existent today, they would probably also have it for different industries.
Probably.
Because obviously manufacturing is going to be different from a service type business.
Yeah.
So you just give him your work papers, and then he takes the totals, puts them in his, like, he doesn't download anything from you guys?
I've seen them do differently depending upon the auditor, but
Uh-huh.
some of them, they want the data from you in Excel so they can,
Right,
just cut and paste.
Right.
And some of them, there was one audit that actually, like 2 or 3 weeks before, they sent the spreadsheet to me to have me fill in some of the.
So you would do it in the format that was compatible for them.
Right.
That was smart though.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'd have to convert it over perhaps. Now that has helped out a great deal, there's no question, like the idea about recomputing the interest on the note. The Excel spreadsheet can do that.
Right.
Right.
So, but still, and so read about that. I thought that was an interesting part of the chapter. And it would be nice if we had, like an auditing 2 class where we could use some of those type, they're almost like template type things or Excel spreadsheets and actually do parts of an audit. That might come to that we used to do that in the old days, and maybe that's coming back again, because I think academia is beginning to look more like, well, we train people in a lot of theory, but can they do anything? Law schools were notorious for that. You went to law school and you graduated, and maybe you even graduated with honors, but you didn't know how to go to the courthouse, how to file papers or anything.
Right.
Now they're making it mandatory in law school that you actually have to do that work or be like an intern or something. So you actually, when you get out, you know how to do a real estate closing. You know how to file a complaint with the court or something. And that's why I like to see that here. Now, if you work for a public accounting firm, they probably will have a training course. And when I went to work at Arthur Andersen, they had the training center in St. Charles, and we actually went out there for 3 complete weeks. Monday through Friday, dressed in a suit and tie, but attending classes and living in a dorm and having homework at night. You was basically auditing every aspect of the financial statements.
I think
So-
that would have been an interesting, like, course project for us to do. Like, I know we're creating an audit program, which is like the first step, but
Yes.
I don't know, because then we're gonna do the first step and then it's like nothing, you know? I don't know.
If you want to do
Okay,
something, we're not supposed to have extra credit, but I would certainly give extra credit, or if people wanted to get together and do something, and then I would ask for permission to use it, maybe in some of the subsequent classes. I've never done the undergraduate 444 class, but it looks rather strange. And this
I know.
project that I'm giving you may be difficult for them because they don't have work experience many times. But again, anything you want to do, I know time is of the essence, obviously. That would be actually advantageous, though.
Well, in these classes, 8 weeks goes by so fast.
Right.
Well, that's why when we used to have 10-week classes, and they meant longer periods, that was advantageous, but then the University of Phoenix started 8, and then everyone had to go to 8. And some, I think Phoenix has some 4- and 6-week classes as well. And as Lena was mentioning, it's all now profits, even for the public schools, at the college and university level, so it's really unbelievable. And you wonder how much we might be shortchanging the academic process. I'm proud of a lot of our courses here at Keller, though. I think I did a pretty good job preparing you in the tax course, and we certainly are covering every chapter in the book pretty much, so I mean, we can't say that we're delinquent there. So I want to spend a little bit of time in that area. Now I want to talk about Chapter 8, which I know was from last time. And we'll go through some of the pages of the chapter, but I also wanted to go over some of my own ideas. I have Bill's steps to planning an audit. Now, these are my steps. This is not necessarily academia oriented.
So, but on a quiz, you'll give us credit with your steps or?
Oh, yeah, you could use mine if they're asking for planning an audit on the final. They'll have their theoretical stuff, but you can put mine down and I'll be even happier.
So this is stuff we definitely want to use for a project.
Well, these are the steps that if you were assigned to an audit and you were at the senior or probably the senior level, what you would want to do in planning the audit.
Okay.
Not so much what we need for the course project.
Oh, okay.
My first step is to research the industry and the company. Research the industry and the company.
I'm so sorry I typed loud.
That's okay.
I don't wanna.
And using, so do I. And using AICPA audit guides, things of that nature. So research the industry and the company. AICPA audit guides. Now, if you were working at Arthur Andersen, you would have already been trained in an industry. You became a specialist. You would be assigned to manufacturing. You would be assigned to S&Ls. You would be assigned to nonprofits. So you would already know the industry. But it may be a new client for you, so you don't know the company. Yes, sir.
How much does the different industry affect the process of the audit?
I think it affects it a great deal in certain areas. I was assigned to manufacturing, where there was so a significant part of the audit was attributable to property, plant, and equipment. That was the UV schedule under Anderson's system. Whereas if you were in a nonprofit or something, that would be a negligible part of the audit because you just have your computer equipment and some desk and chairs and filing cabinets, and that would be it. But fundamentals like accounts receivable and so forth would be the same under all those areas.
Inventory obviously is different. You know,
Yes, yes.
You know, raw materials and finished goods and work in progress.
Versus, let's say, doing like Macy's over here,
Right.
where it's all retail
Right.
inventory. Exactly. But it's kind of nice to have the specialization if you want to stay in a particular industry, because most people who go to public accounting eventually want to go, usually working for a client. Now we have the 1-year sit-out period. So if you wanted to work for a manufacturer eventually, and you were in the manufacturing division of PricewaterhouseCoopers, you would certainly know the industry. And there you'd know the company if you went to work for them afterwards and maybe go into internal audit. And I know we had the 1 year sitting out, and I understand why, but I thought the people went from big 8 firms or big 4 firms and then went into internal audit, were actually acting as if they were external auditors and really doing the job that they were meant to accomplish. Okay, step 2, these are Bill's personal steps. Study last year's work papers. Study last year's work papers. And I put down especially the continuing audit file. I'll have to stop and explain that. Study last year's work papers, especially the continuing audit file, and, all right, but let's stop a second. This schedule was called the CAF, the continuing audit file, and it included a variety of background information. This was information that needed to be carried over from one audit to the next. For example, you'd put in documents like the articles of incorporation or the bylaws. That would go in there because that's going to be applicable to numerous years' audits. The most up-to-date organization chart. Now that obviously might change from one period to another. Your company has a 20-year lease, so that lease document is going to affect 20 different years. That should be in the continuing audit file because that's going to go to the next year's audit team as well. Anything that influences next year's audit team should go in the continuing audit file. Also, let's say you are auditing 2015 and you're out there till, let's say, middle of March, based on the size of the company. And I was on bigger audits, so we were out there almost 3 full months of the next year. Smaller company, obviously, be a lesser period of time. And you saw something in 2016 that didn't affect the year you were auditing, but you thought it might be relevant for the 2016 audit, of which you may not be a member of the team. So you would put in a point sheet, and in the upper right-hand corner, I would put 2016, and I'd put it in the continuing audit file. This would tell next year's audit team, this is something you might want to look into. This doesn't affect our audit, but we noticed that it happened during the time that we were out at the client. So it's a nice follow-up for somebody on next year's audit team. Now, if you're on next year's audit team, you probably would remember that, but it's nice to document it anyway, just in case perhaps you forgot the specifics. Then for point 2, again I said, this was part of point 2, and interview someone, preferably a manager or senior, from last year's audit. Interview someone, a manager or senior level, preferably from last year's audit. Now that means you're assigned to the audit for the first time, and you're not familiar with the client. And some things may not be documented. For example, let's say that you contact the audit senior from last year, and he says, well, if you want to get true information, go to Lena. If you go to Sally, she'll try and deceive you. Not necessarily lying to you, but misrepresentation by silence. Who you can contact, who's most reliable. Or don't contact Bill before 10 o'clock in the morning because he's going to bark at you, but after that, he's a real sweetheart. You know, because personalities aren't going to be documented in the work papers. But that can have an influence on how you order what you're going to do on a daily basis on the audit. So those are informal things. Now, in some cases, that may not be possible. I also worked for a public accounting firm called Wolf and Company, which was a national firm, eventually absorbed by, I think it was Deloitte Touche. And we had an audit team that handled a lot of Chicago area S&Ls, savings and loans. Well, the members of that audit group left Wolf and set up their own practice and took the clients. So we filed a lawsuit against them and basically got an injunction against them doing the audit. So that means we were doing the audit, but the thing was, nobody was left at Wolf Chicago office, which was on Monroe. Nobody was left at Wolf who had been on those audits because they all left and now they're litigants. So we all had to learn basically how to handle that. I wasn't part of audit then, I was part of tax, so I had to do all the tax work. And there was nobody around either who had done any of the tax work for the S&Ls. So I had to become quickly a tax expert for doing the tax returns for these S&Ls. And the people on the audits had to become audit experts for that industry very quickly. And to a great deal, let's face it, you rely on last year's work papers. Look at last year's audit schedule, look at the time schedule, look at the work papers, see where difficulties arose. That will influence, obviously, and help to train you for areas of which you have no background, other than basic training through the company itself. Number 3, tour the plant and corporate offices and speak with management. Tour the plant and corporate offices and speak with management. Now that's going to be done probably a couple months before you're going to be actually starting the audit. So let's say I'm assigned to Gardner Denver Company in Quincy, Illinois, and I'm new on the audit. If they were a calendar year company. So back around the end of October, beginning of November, I would actually go down to Quincy. I would schedule an appointment. That was a manufacturing facility with all their corporate headquarters. They built air compressors and stuff like that. And I would go tour the area. I would talk to the management people, the controller, CFO, so forth. Just kind of setting up the game plan. I would indicate all my needs. I'll talk about that in a later point. For example, we need the copier. We're going to use our own PCs. We need a place which we can lock and so forth to secure our belongings and so forth. So going through a lot of that information, plus introducing yourself. So there won't be a shock when you show up at the audit team. Now the audit team will be new to them, but they'll know you. Now, if you've been on an audit for many years there, like if you've been the audit senior for 2 years and now you're the manager, basically you don't really probably need to do that. You might be able to today just send an email or something there, just confirming something because you've already know the facility and you've talked to the personnel.
Can you just refresh my memory?
Yes.
You could be the senior for an indefinite amount of years, or
Well,
do they rotate?
probably for a limited number of years, because if you were a senior more than 3 years and had not been promoted to manager, what Anderson did was they would actually let you go. I mean, there are some firms that will let you be an audit senior, let's say, forever. Because you'll see some audit seniors that looks like they're 60 years old, and they've been in that same capacity. But Anderson said, in other words, you either move up, or it's better for you if we let you go, because obviously you're not going to advance here.
Is it because they don't feel that they're good, or it's a conflict of interest, meaning for the client, you're out there all the time, you have relationships, it might impair your...
I think it's more based on your abilities and what they saw for your future. Now, it could be also that they would, if they were worried about you getting too comfortable with the client, a senior level up has a client list. Only the inexperienced and experienced assistant level don't. So when you're a senior, they would often modify, or transfer clients. So for example, I was a senior for several years, and some of the clients that I worked on as a senior for 2 years, they transferred to one of my experienced assistants who had worked with me, because he was now going to be a senior. So they felt, well, we'll give him those clients because he knows them. And then they gave me new clients that I hadn't been familiar with. For example, I had all the Marshall Field Trust, the family trust. And that was a really complex area because they were very difficult trusts to handle. I'd love to have gotten rid of that group, but I never could. They always kept said, Bill's gonna handle those, so whatever.
It's funny, I interviewed for a position at the family that owns Arlington Racecourse.
Oh, okay, Dupichois, or what is it? Or-
Duchessois.
That's it, I couldn't remember the name.
And they wanted me to come in, but then I got scared because somebody was like, well, that's not really where you want to go, meaning public accounting and stuff. 'Cause it's the lady, like, you're not going to be doing anything related to public accounting. So
Perhaps, in other words, you would be working, but for their family and handling their...
handing their estates, their generations.
That would be an interesting job, and obviously would have, if you did a good job, you'd have job security, but you'd be so restricted.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, you'd know their family and all their holdings by heart, but yeah, then let's say they broke everything apart or something, then you would be less marketable.
So that
probably
wouldn't look good on a resume?
Well, it might look all right on a resume for just to show that a prominent, wealthy family had faith in your ability, but it's not going to help grow you
Right.
as far as a profession. So maybe it's better you didn't. That's one thing in public accounting, you get a lot more experience because you're working on a variety of audits or working on taxes for a variety of different clients. So you have a better perspective. Plus you have all that training for an entire industry usually. But again, it depends in public accounting. Usually when people get older and have larger families, public accounting is not always the place to be because of the demands. Most people in here, may be young enough, and you just have like one daughter, so that probably would be okay. If you had 4 or 5 kids, it probably would be more difficult, let's say to work, 12-hour days, 13-hour days, because that's often required during busy season, whether it's an audit or tax, more so an audit.
Okay. I'll ask you more questions.
Yes,
I don't wanna
please,
cut
and we're
into
gonna
the
we
lecture.
talked about staying in touch and stuff too.
When I get started in accounting, will I have time to work on my own microfinance project, or am I gonna have to put that off for a couple years?
Initially, you might have to put something off when you're first becoming, trained with them, with all their training and with the longer hours. Later on, as you become more proficient, you probably could do that. I mean, you could still have a life. I mean, there are people who stay in public accounting all the way through the partner level, and they have families and everything here. And I'm sure they do other items as well. In fact, when they get up at the partner level, we were mentioning they may serve on the board of directors of a company. They may work with a charitable organization that they're very close to, and they're doing that on their own time. It's just initially, I just want to apprise you that it's, as you probably are aware, it's not a 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 job. But it is during some seasons. For example, in the audit staff in the summer, there's not as much going on. They would encourage you to take vacation during the summer. Or at Anderson, I forget like how many hours it was now this is based on your compensation, of overtime. You were entitled to overtime pay, at a certain level. And they would accumulate those hours and not pay you, and then they would encourage you to take that as additional vacation in the summer when they really didn't need you. And then if you didn't take it, then you got paid at the end of the year at whatever your pay rate was at the time you worked those hours. If you were studying, now they did have lower level people who were studying for the CPA exam. Nowadays, I think they want you to have the CPA almost first. But they would let those people during the day when they're being paid, they would let them work in one of the staff rooms studying for the exam. As I said, I don't think that happens much now because usually they're asking for you to be a CPA right away.
So, I think this would help, because you haven't had any experience in accounting. How would you recommend, for me, I feel like I'm stuck in because I work for a mechanical contractor, so construction, and I'm doing the financials. I have like, you know, I built my resume, but even to get out of it, like I've been looking and it's like, no one wants to pay me what I'm making, and I'll take a decrease, but then they're like, oh, well, you know, you might not stay, so we can't even look at you because you're making too much for what. I don't have any public accounting experience, and then I don't have my CPA yet, so.
But the thing is, when you get your CPA, you know, you might, you know, there are CPA firms that obviously audit these major construction companies. That might be something in your favor because you have construction industry experience.
You're already an expert.
Which
in
might
that.
bring you in at a higher pay level.
So, okay.
Yeah, and, you know, the firm you work for might be a smaller firm, but there's these big construction outfits, as you know.
Right.
And I'm sure they have one of the big four public accounting firms doing their audits.
Well, right now we have Miller Cooper, who actually does our, like, it's not an audit because we're not publicly traded, but it's a, like a review every year. So we do Miller Cooper.
And you could mention, though, that I've worked with Miller Cooper doing a review that's similar to an audit, you know, and that you know construction industry information. Were you involved with the new capitalization regs and stuff that just came out?
No.
Okay, because I know I go, interesting, each year, because I used to work in the industry, I go.
Construction?
Construction,
Oh.
yeah, Chicago Bridge and Iron, the construction. And so I go to the construction industry conference that the Illinois CPA Society has. It's at Drury Lane. I do it for continuing education credits, and it's also convenient to Bill's house. You know, I live out that way. And you would be fascinated because you have more background. They have speakers on different subject matter. One was dealing with these new construction, these regulations that affected the industry a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
But there were other areas that you would be even more familiar with than me now because I've been out of the industry.
I mean, our industry is a little bit different. It's not full-on construction. It's like, we do heating and air conditioning. So we do like, we work with 597 pipe fitters, and so basically we're building.
Yeah, at Chicago Bridge, we had the Boilermakers Union
Right,
and stuff.
so yeah, so we do the sheet metal union and then the 597 pipe fitters, but, so it's not on like construction, that's why I'm like, what are you talking about with the new, is that with?
There's some new regulations that dealt with items that deal with capitalized versus expense. And companies were supposed to change their method of accounting. The IRS had lost some cases in court. So the IRS retroactively changed some regulations, so companies had to file for a change in accounting method, and some items that they had capitalized could now be expensed. I didn't understand all of it, I must confess, and I'm not involved with that. But when that conference usually comes up the end of October, beginning of November, I'm wondering if they would let you go,
Oh,
and
they'll
if
let me go.
they would let you, if they would pay for it. It's around $300.
Yeah,
It
they
includes
would.
lunch.
Can you let me know?
Yes, I will, but we're gonna stay in touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm gonna go to it again this year. I haven't signed up yet, but I want to go to it again.
Is your company a smaller company or?
I mean, we do a lot, but yeah, we are a smaller,
How big is
family-owned.
your accounting department?
Just like 5 people. And I'm barely getting them, well, now they're basically a married couple that owns it, and they never really trusted people because they've had a lot of issues where people tried to like transfer money out of their accounts and stuff, and so they actually went to a consultant, the lady I told you about who's a CPA firm that
Yes.
used to do all the financials, and now they're trusting me and they're giving me all this stuff because I don't want to stay if they don't give me it, you know?
But that's just, it's still not a 1 or 2 person county department. You still got 5 people.
Right,
So,
so we
you
have
know,
like
that-
an
that's,
AP,
you know-
yeah, we have.
Yeah, so that's a
it's-
decent size.
You think? I don't know.
I mean, it's not like Chicago Bridge where, I mean, we had, I think, 8 people in general accounting, and we had 6 in consolidations, and we had accounts payable and accounts, I mean, but we were a much bigger outfit. You know, with international operations as well. We did a lot of work in Saudi Arabia and oil and gas and things, so, as well as US.
Yeah,
But, you know-
my experience has been, well, I just recently moved up here, but, you know, with all the years I have in experience in accounting, most of my experience, pretty much all of it has been in smaller companies.
Okay.
My last position was controller, and I had 3 direct reports. And my issue up here has been first they won't even talk to me until I have the MBA or the CPA license.
Oh, yeah. You've
and,
been looking, is that what you're
right,
saying?
right.
Yeah, because that's what I've been looking, like, oh, CPA. I had an interview with Ernst & Young
Oh, good.
for like a beginner position, and she like stopped in the middle of the interview. She's like, oh, you don't have your CPA? I said, no.
See, that's why it's changed. When I was
I
there, they
said-
let you
right.
start without it, now you gotta have it.
Right, I
see.
said, my resume says, you know, in pursuit of it or whatever, and, or CPA track, and she's like, oh, I must have missed that. She's like, I don't wanna waste any more of your time, we don't hire anybody who
Yeah.
doesn't have their CPA.
But
Once
you
you
know-
get your CPA, you sound like a great candidate, but you need to
Yeah, I
contact.
talked
See, what's interesting there too, though, the machine reads those resumes, it's all CPA.
Right.
So I figured it
Right.
didn't,
But
didn't see the word
It's
track.
funny because their AR person, even if they read it, and that's great, because then you at least get yourself in.
Sure, yeah.
And then she should have looked at my resume, because I have people that contact me that don't even look at my resume. I'm like, are you serious? You're calling me about, let's just say, a collections person,
Yeah.
and I'm already a manager. Why would you even call me
Yeah,
about that
that's a
position?
good point.
She's
Why
like,
would I be interested in a step down?
she's like, oh, I didn't notice that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
But it's interesting to note, though, that reconfirms that for the major firms now, they want the CPA before
yeah,
they got hired.
and not even the major firms, because I've been looking in industry and CPA preferred,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just like, okay. That's why I went back to school to get my, because I at first just wanted to get done with my bachelor's degree, you know?
I've noticed a huge difference between Chicago market and Atlanta market. Up here, you know, I see senior accountant roles that they want a CPA license for, you know.
Down in Atlanta, did they not?
No, I mean, it may say, you know, CPA preferred, but,
But they would hire someone without
Yeah,
the CPA
yeah.
if they found and thought
Right.
they were good.
right.
That might be based on the region which we're in here, which means they could probably get enough CPAs to fill the positions. Whereas maybe down where you were, you know, down south, that maybe there weren't enough available. And so they took other learned candidates that could handle
I
the job.
mean, CPA preferred doesn't mean they're not gonna look at anybody who doesn't have a CPA. You just need to have a great interview.
Oh, yes.
You know, because I'm horrible at interviewing because I get too nervous.
Well, that's why we want all you guys to become CPAs, then you've got that already. Put a
Right.
little less pressure on the interview then.
Right. But then it's even gonna be hard, that's why I was trying to ask, like, how do you get your foot in the door? Because like, I've never done tax. So after I took your class, I'm like, man, tax is kind of interesting. So
Mhm.
then I was looking and I met that lady at Deloitte who was
Right.
in tax. And it's like, if you don't have any experience in tax, they don't want you. So how do you get experience if they won't even give you a chance to give you experience?
Well, in the major CPA firms, you usually start an audit, but they'll take some of the people on audit who are doing a good job and are interested in tax and let them transfer over.
Okay, but even auditing, you need experience, so how do you get experience?
Well,
You
well-
don't, so it's like you need to know somebody to take a chance on you.
Well, like Barry's got experience with audit, and you do too, because you've dealt with that review that's done
Well,
by
I
the other
talked to them,
firm.
so is that experience?
Well, I mean, that's something, I would certainly, extol that.
Yeah.
You know, say, yes, I've worked with auditors, doing, whether it's an official audit or a high spot review or something for a private held company, so I know how their function operates. In your case, like if it's, you know the construction industry, if it's gonna be a public accounting firm that has construction industry clients, you know, you're really, and in your case, the companies that you work for and what they dealt with and things, you know, you're building up everything you possibly can.
So what industry do you work for?
Well, the industry I was in was distribution.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I'm looking at right now, basically, in order to get my foot in the door in a larger company, I am looking at taking a step back.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Any industry then, you're just open to,
I'm currently in a contract position right now.
okay, and you like you said in the beginning you liked operations, right? The operational manager more
Yeah,
likely,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if it wasn't, if the CPA credential did not hold so much weight, I
Right.
would be going for the CMA.
Yeah.
I noticed that Becker used to have the CMA, then they dropped it, but apparently they've got it online now again. But no, you want the CPA. You know, later on if you want to get the CMA also, because I used to have a friend who had both. But the CPA, please. You know, at least get that one under your belt
So,
first.
do you guys go to networking events? Because I'm going to tell you, networking is all that's what it is
Yeah.
right now. It's like networking, and you can't be shy, because that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, put a freaking shot of something down my throat before I go, because I'm like, I might not be shy in this class, but I am shy in really big groups.
All right, well, I don't know, I think, I don't know your background as much, but I know these guys got some good experience here now. Now, in education, I'm not sure how that will operate, you know, despite all your.
I'll be taking a pay cut.
Well, that's probably true too. But sometimes it's worthwhile, because, you know, you'll make it up within a few years anyway.
I hope so.
You know, exactly. Okay, number 4, don't laugh at me. Remember you were touring the plant and office to speak with manager? Check on a secure working area. Check on a secure working area. Number 5, something else we talked about, provide a list of PBC schedules, capital P, capital B, capital C, schedules, and when you need them. Provide a list of PBC schedules and when, in other words, you need those schedules. And notice you're doing this when you go down there at the end of October, beginning of November, you're giving them the listing so they'll have plenty of time to get things ready.
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yes, provide a list of, and it's capital PBC,
BC.
which means provided by client.
Okay.
PBC schedules and when needed, and Barry told us about how they even provided some templates or something to make sure the data would be in the format they wanted it in. Number 6, and now this list was prepared, I prepared this list, I think even before Sarbanes-Oxley. I don't remember exactly when, so I might have done this in the late 90s. Review the system of internal control. Review the system of internal control. Nowadays, of course, that has been altered to some degree because now management must give an assessment of the system. I think that's 404 Part A. And then the auditor, 404 Part B, obviously must give an opinion on the management assessment of the system of internal control. But notice reviewing the system of internal control was always a part of the audit, even before Sarbanes-Oxley, section 404. Number 7, do ratio analysis and analytical procedures. Do ratio analysis and analytical procedures. And establish risk and materiality standards. Establish risk and materiality standards. That was part of the chapter this week. When I talk about the ratio analysis and analytical procedures, remember we're talking about horizontal, vertical analysis, as well as, and our book goes into that, as well as relevant ratios. Like, you know, if you're in retailing, inventory turnover, what is the change between years? Is it going in the right direction? How do we compare with our competitors in the industry? Obviously, things of that nature that you studied in some of your other courses. Number 8, review the minute books. Review the minute books. Now, this comes up, we'll have to look at some homework soon, but don't let the client say, we don't want you to review the official minute books, but we will give you certified resolutions from the board of directors. No, you have to be allowed to see the actual minute books.
What if they don't like you?
Then you'll say, I'm sorry, then you'll get a disclaimer on the audit. Now, what I experienced was I always was allowed to read the minute books, but I had to do it at the executive offices. They were not to leave that location. And if I wanted any copies, they had to do it for me, and I had to assure them that I would not be sharing that with outside of the audit. Because there's a lot of confidential information that may be brought up by the Board of Directors meetings.
Is that only going to apply when you're dealing with a public company though?
Yes, all my experiences with public companies, yes.
You said, but we will show you what?
If they don't let them try and show you certified copies of the Board of Directors resolutions. Certified copies of the Board of Directors resolutions. You want to see everything. Now, one of the homework problems, basically, you get to read the books and everything is relevant. But yes, you want to see everything that occurred that was written up by the secretary for the Board of Directors. Number 9, evaluate the need for outside specialists. Evaluate the need for outside specialists. Let me comment on that. In a major public accounting firm, there are probably specialists in every area at one of your offices. For example, at Arthur Anderson, there was an oil and gas specialist who was a partner out of the Tulsa office. But even there, when it's somebody within your own firm, you need to schedule that in advance. If you need some kind of oil and gas expertise, this person is going to be in great demand. You might want them to come to a client's site, so you're going to have to schedule that so it's convenient to them. Now they're going to bill your client. Whatever their huge billing rate is if they're a partner, but you need that expertise. If you're a smaller or medium-sized CPA firm and you don't have an in-house person like that, you're going to have to hire an outside firm. And again, you'll have to go over scheduling and pricing. Whatever you have to pay, of course, will be charged to the client through the audit.
Can you mark that up?
I wouldn't do it personally, because usually those are pretty expensive to begin with. You can try.
It's not illegal?
No, it's not illegal. No, it's just like you could buy merchandise and mark it up at a retail store. Number 10, identify related parties. Identify related parties. Now, Bill, what are you talking about here? Is it human beings? No, it could be like brother-sister corps. So it's not just human beings we're talking about, but any related party scenarios, because related party transactions, as we know, are not always at arm's length.
It's in the chapter, right?
Yeah, a lot of these they have in here. This was my own list that I did. Number 11 in Bill's list, coordinate with activities at other locations. Coordinate with activities at other locations. This, for example, might be when we're counting inventory. And it's at different locations, maybe throughout the country. Or there's a subsidiary of our client of the Chicago office who's in LA. We have an LA office ourselves, and so we'll have them do the audit of that particular subsidiary. They're our own people.
They have to be at the same time?
It doesn't have to be it has to be during the time that we're doing our audit.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but it wouldn't have to be like the same week or month. So those are our own people. It's just that they work at another office, and so we'll want to make sure that they can work that into their schedule. Then, of course, they'll charge the client of the Chicago office. 12, prepare an engagement letter. We'll be looking at that in just a few minutes. Prepare an engagement letter. There's an example in the text, but it's lacking something in Bill's opinion. You know Bill. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. 13, staff the engagement, hopefully have someone from last year's audit team. Hopefully have someone from last year's audit team. Now, I want to comment on this one. There are some inexperienced or experienced assistants in a public accounting firm who have a reputation for being the most qualified. There are others who are more marginal, whose future with the firm will probably be more limited. To make your job easier, you want to have the high caliber people, but they're in great demand. So what I always did was I tried to get friendly with the superstar assistant level people so they would request permission to be assigned to my audit. Makes my job a lot easier. Now, why someone from last year's audit team? That's the continuity again. Somebody who was out there for the 3 months last year, who knows the ins and outs of how to deal with the client. That's a crucial area. You may not get the people you want, but if you get the lower level experienced assistant people who are probably going to be out of the firm within a year or two, that's going to make your job a lot harder. It's going to be much more difficult to do the audit under budget, because there's going to be a lot of rework required here, because there's going to be so many modifications. That's why you like to have the superstars if you can. Number 14, make sure we have the necessary equipment. Make sure we have the necessary equipment. So that means having the laptops. Now, when I was at Anderson, we used to use foot lockers. Remember the old trunks? And we'd put the paper, but these were all paper audit papers. We'd put them in there and lock it with our own padlocks, so a client wouldn't have access to that. That's of course an era which we had, nothing was really computerized. Now we want to, of course, we want to make sure we have the equipment, and remember we check with the client, because we're not going to bring a copier machine down there, to make sure we have access to their copier, and for more hours than they're there. They're going to go home at 5 or 6 o'clock at night. We're going to be there till 9 at night. We want to make sure we have access to their copier machine for those later hours as well, or any other equipment we need of theirs. And number 15, because Bill always got sent out of town because he was single and didn't have family, make travel arrangements. Make travel arrangements, transportation and hotel. Make travel arrangements, transportation and hotel. Nowadays, that's a little bit easier because you've got these extended suites hotels. In my era, we stayed at the Holiday Inn, for example, in Quincy. Every second week, we would go home, then we'd come back. And we had to check in and check out of the hotel. Nowadays, we could just have a 3-month lease on the hotel room and leave our stuff there. Okay. Does the room have to be fancy? No. Are you going to have a lot of time at the hotel? No. You're basically going to be there for only one purpose, and what is that? Sleeping. That's it, because you might leave at 7 in the morning, have breakfast, and be at the client till 9 at night and get home at 10.
Do they buy you lunch?
You usually will get lunch on your own.
Oh.
You can't, right?
I'm sorry?
You don't want to take anything, right?
That's right. Remember, we talked about that, independence and appearance. Remember, we had the Marie Jane's problem, where she was invited to lunch at the vice president's lunchroom or something. I never knew of a vice president lunchroom at an auto dealership, but remember that problem?
Hang on one second.